Before we go into the individual elements that we can add from the left side, I did want to talk about one core concept that may seem simple, but understanding it fully inside of Canva can be very useful as you're creating design and actually open up a lot of cool possibilities. And specifically, it's layers. It's just the concept that everything is stacked up upon something else. Right, so the thing obviously on top, and again, it feels super obvious, and of course it is, but it's something that's stacked on top will cover whatever's beneath it. Now, if it's transparent, you'll be able to see through to it. But where that starts to open up possibilities is that you can cut things off, you can shape things with it. When you really understand layers, it's going to help with understanding how everything's kind of sitting within your design, help you access things that maybe you can't get to because of a click, and generally place things and open up some really cool possibilities when you're designing. So, very clearly you can see the layers at work here where the gray one is on top of the one below it, this gradient blob below it. And that immediately kind of gives us some interesting options as far as creating a unique shape that's below. Now, a bit more interesting though is because that is the case, if we hide it, we can create these, because we understand that it's going to hide it whatever's below, we can create these sort of more interesting shapes where it kind of looks like the middle of this circle is getting filled up by whatever's inside of it because it's hiding it. Now if we go center back, of course it'll just be standing on top of things. Now if we add, let's say, a triangle on top of it, let's give it a different color so it stands out. It's kind of a little bit soft. Let's go something a little firmer. Okay. Right, so obviously, just very clearly it's 1, 2, and 3. Now right click, send to back, and this is all handled through position, send to back. Right, so you can obviously play around with that. That starts to get interesting. Further interesting though is if you kind of really appreciate it, you can start to have a bit more fun with things. So let's say that we create that design from before where it looks like we're going to make it look like water's filling up the middle of this circle. So we'll right click on this guy, or we go to the position, forward, and now it's absolutely on top. Well, because we understand layers, what we can do is bring this triangle, bring that to the front. All right. Let's turn that around. What if we made it white? So if we made that the same color of the background color, because it's on top, it's going to make it look like it's cutting it out. So inside of Canva, there's no great way to cut out shapes from shapes, but because we understand layers and we can play around with the colors, all of a sudden we get these kind of more interesting ideas where we can, get the results we want without actually being able to edit the shapes themselves, just because we can layer things and have play tricks in the mind. Let's say, just to kind of finish this one out, you can almost imagine like we have, you make it look like there's drips coming down that's filling up the shape, right? So it's a fairly simple concept, but it truly is really powerful. Just to understand that items are stacking on top of items, stacking on top of other items, and then we can exploit that because of shapes and cutouts and unique croppings that we can do. And again, just really quickly to show that one too, that gives you a lot of fun with photos. Let's find my favorite kind of coffee photos. Again, so we have this photo here because we can layer things on top of it and we understand how those work. Now, of course, there are grids, which we'll cover in a different episode, which allow you to add photos to predefined shapes, but every now and then you're going to find something you can't create, or you want to just try to have a bit more fun on your own. So if we move this around, I can just cut off the corners, for instance, because I know I can layer them on top and then play with the color to kind of get the effect that I want. Right? So that becomes kind of interesting. And then, all suffice to say too, of course, you can play with transparency. Let me just, didn't mean to copy that, but If you had 3 squares of varying colors, 1, make that a different shade. Let's copy another one. Different shade. You could start to make interesting shapes too because you're playing with the transparency of the items on top. So I've selected this middle one here. I'm going to adjust that transparency down, and then I'm going to adjust that transparency down. So at the surface, understanding layers is quite simple, quite obvious. However, what it enables you to do is come up with really unique combinations, and enables you to extend the capabilities of Canva because you can do unique cutouts and shapes and interesting ideas. You can cover or reveal things as you choose because things are layered on top of one another. And same thing with the transparency, where showing how much shows or hides or covering only particular parts of something to make it more dynamic in the sense of, let's get this on here just as a quick last example, send to back, because I dragged it out, it was covering everything, but I could send it to back. In this case here, you could imagine covering some of the photos so you can maybe have text show up better. So transparency and layering gives you a lot of options for what you can do. So I just want to make that a quick point. It's worth understanding it a bit more in depth in how you can use layering of the elements, everything just stacking on top of one another, placement and colors and transparency to really create some cool, unique effects and extend the capabilities of Canva.